This is Arius Beckett Sumpay, known among the Seattle homeless community as Lady Gangster for reasons which in the last 2 days have become far too obvious. She was previously convicted of a felony assault, another stabbing at another homeless camp, and her criminal history includes 3 felonies, 7 gross misdemeanors, and currently 24 outstanding warrants for her arrest. So it shouldn't have come as any surprise when 2 days ago, Lady Gangster walked up on another homeless person in a Seattle tent camp and stabbed him, lacerating his intestines, his spleen, and his liver. Now, it was a quick prison shank sewing machine type attack. The video is available online. You could see it. What made it even more bizarre was the response, because before collapsing, the man who got stabbed retreated to his tent where, surprisingly enough, he had not one but 3 rifles, retrieved an AK-47 style rifle, chased Miss Sumpay down the alley, firing several shots, missing everyone. Another homeless person with another rifle also shot at Miss Sumpay and missed. Now, this all took place approximately 3 hours before the mayor of Seattle was finally going to acknowledge, well, what anyone with 2 brain cells left to rub together already knew, that these are not down on their luck, hard luck stories and victims of the system, that across the board, almost without exception, they are predatory miscreant scumbags. That's right. The mayor was finally going to pony up and admit that, yes, there are massive increases in crime in Seattle, and yes, they are tied directly to the influx of the homeless and the growing homeless problem. Even in this chart, you can see the rate of violent crimes was 40 times higher among the homeless population, and nonviolent crimes 27 times higher. Finally, even a blue city mayor, like the mayor of Seattle, was going to be forced to admit it. And it's long overdue. I mean, he's had to deal with these kind of scenes all around the Seattle area, just like they have to deal with these kind of scenes in Portland. Now, ordinarily, if you didn't live in Seattle and Portland, you wouldn't think too much about it. But here's the scene now in my hometown of Spokane. Why? Because Seattle and Portland are shipping their dregs and scumbags by the busload to my hometown. This is the scene off of Freya and 2nd. It was a 20 square block unoccupied area that is now 20 square blocks of this nonsense, complete with used needles all over the place, human feces on the sidewalk, and a feckless city government that swears that, well, there's legally nothing we can do about it. Funny, that's exactly what they said back in Seattle during 2020 when this sort of thing was going on. Do you guys remember that? The Chaz Chop phenomenon, the Capitol Hill Autonomous Zone, where a bunch of lefty scumbags enabled by the fucking shock troops of homeless that they were swearing to ally with and feed and bring social equity and all those other happy buzzwords. Yeah, we remember how that turned out. It turned out with murders. Not before Mayor Jenny Durkin of the time at Seattle said, first of all, conceded an entire police precinct to these fucking predatory miscreants, but then proceeded to say, no, it's a block party atmosphere. It's going to turn into a summer of love. Less than 72 hours later, a 16-year-old kid was shot to death with automatic weapon fire. And of course, the Chaz Chop administrative board, whatever the fuck, scrambled the evidence. So the police had no fucking suspects and no way to investigate. That crime is yet to be solved. Now, everybody thought that we could just do the humanitarian thing, that we could appease them for a while, but finally, people with balls and spines decided to do the right thing. And the few remaining drops of testosterone that were left in the city of Seattle went into this effort right here. They finally unleashed the forces of law and order to go in and take back the Capitol Hill Autonomous Zone. This is what it looks like when you recognize what the problem is and recognize the horrors and recognize exactly how they must be dealt with. This is not an ideology that comes natural to people on the left. You see, being the unprincipled ideologues and zealots that they are so convinced of their own bullshit religiosity that they think that their way is the only way. Well, they found out different over the course of 2020. You'd never know by hearing from the media. You will hope that going forward, as we all do, that they will see the necessity of what must be done, that the only thing that predatory, miscreant, dogs walking upright scumbags respond to are the big three. Say it with me, boys and girls: fear, pain, and force. They will either figure out and do what is necessary, or the next response may look something like this. Because sooner or later, if the designated governmental authorities refuse to step in, good people will get to a point where they have had enough. And God help the mortal souls of those who took our complacency for compliance and our kindness for weakness. We could live to see the day. If so, lo, may it come quickly. The opinions expressed by the Reverend are his own and no one else's on the planet. Not friends, not foes, not supporters, not detractors, not sponsors, and I cannot stress this enough, certainly not employers. They have been adjudicated thought crime in all jurisdictions. Consider yourself warned. They are coming from the heart. They are guided by the mind. They are guaranteed to choke you with a big, fat dose of the truth cock. Welcome back, boys and girls. It's time once again for the Sunday sermon. What a week. The good, the bad, the ugly, and we're going over all of it here. Where's my fire in the house, people? Let's see where the energy is. Everybody in for the drum roll. Coming hard, charging out of the starting gate as we always do. Our bumper music, as always. The band Red Desert from the smoldering embers of once great city of Minneapolis, Minnesota. Another city caught up in the chaos of 2020. Another city that failed to act in time, and another city that suffered the consequences. Hopefully, we have all learned our lessons, particularly the cities that fell victim to it the first time around. In any case, Red Desert from the smoldering embers of Minneapolis, Minnesota. The name of the track is Older No Wiser. Every week I get a little bit older, and every week you guys get inside if I've gotten any wiser. Some weeks I do better than others. Quick roll call. Let's see who's on. Oh, first of all, Brother Dennis Weimer, OG Prophet of Doom. OG is here first, and of course, my beloved Oksana Denise. You beautiful creature because Russia. All right, man. We got Denise on board. Honda Wade again. Cool. Good to see you. You have a regular fixture now, man. It's good, man. I'm glad to have you on board. Thank you, Brother Joel. I will be seeing you next week, my friend. On board using the YouTube app on a smart TV. I could berate you for having a smart TV in your house, but I'm going to leave it alone. Brother Roman from opiumtales.com, and of course his lovely wife Carrie is also on board. Kurt Voigt, fellow denizen of the Northwest. He knows all about that jazz chop thing. We got Brother G-Dub listening to Rev Hart while delivering fuel in the hood. Oh my God, new level of danger. Just cloak yourself in that protective aura of my hostility, G-Dub. You're going to be fine. Brother G-Dub of the Outlaw Trucker ranks, man. Brother Joey, of course. Mr. and Miss America and all the ships at sea. The High Priest, the Sultan of Sarcasm is on board. Have you heard about the random fires? Well, it's odd that you mentioned that because it is one of our bullet points tonight. G-Dub, we're going to be getting into that here in a little bit. Roman, yeah, you heard about that. That is in the header. You guys saw that. You mentioned the red flag that a whole lot of people, even previously predisposed conspiracy type people, kind of wanted to disregard. But it's gotten to the point now where it not only has to be acknowledged, it's got to be accepted. It's got to be more or less addressed. Whether or not it can be corrected, that's anybody else's guess. But even if corrections can't be made, you got to take corrections in your own life to anticipate, because when you got 100 fresh dicks all stabbing for the same asshole, you got to know which way to turn and how hard to clench. Inappropriate analogy for a family-friendly program. Well, I never said this was a family-friendly program, did I? So I'm going to be on board. Julia Deal McNamee. Oh, you pretty little thing. Low on juice, so may drop off. It's okay, hon. The replay is going to be on the usual Facebook and YouTube. Also, guys, we got 2 more formats. I haven't got the live stream up on Rumble yet, but we have the replay up on Rumble, and the replay is also running on BitChute. So that's 2 more social media platforms that we are on. At least running the replay, even if you can't see it live, you'll always be able to check it out there, man. It gets tighter and tighter on this whole social media thing, man. So we got to branch out a little bit, make it a little bit harder to shut everything down in one spot, because the push is on. And Brother Elon, while stepping it up and winning victories for our side, is going to push that other side even harder, because they're going to clamp down. They realize that their slip on the narrative, their grip on the narrative, rather, is slipping. And, dude, they would just as soon burn it all down and let it slip out of their hands. Anyway, man, we're going to go ahead and fade the bumper music on down and jump off into the program. We got a lot of stuff to cover, man, a whole lot of stuff to cover. Some of it is going to be pretty heavy. Some of it is going to be pretty uplifting. But at the end of the day, you guys know where we're at with regard to all that. We don't do black pills around here. We don't get bummed out no matter how bad it gets. Because at the end of the day, man, remember, and I stand by this with every fiber of my being, just remember, guys, no matter how bad it gets, in the end, we win. In the end, fundamentally, people are suckers for the truth. Fundamentally, people will come around to the truth. Truth is going to set you free, but first it's going to piss you off. You can think of 1,000 cliches. It doesn't matter. The important thing is to keep your head up, and also to keep your head on a swivel, because that's the kind of world that we're living in now, unfortunately. Anyway, let's see here. Go ahead and get the sponsor shout-outs out of the way very, very quickly. First, a little sip of that liquid enthusiasm here. First and foremost, to Brother Roman, one of my oldest and dearest friends at opiumtales.com. They are the erotic pinups and portraits people. It is Roman, his lovely wife, Carrie, and, of course, Roxy and Allie and the bevy of beautiful women over there. We're talking beautifully done watercolors, some high-grade artwork of some very beautiful, very naked women, and a hell of a lot of testosterone-driven commentary as well. So that's sort of like one-stop shopping for all your Reverend Bart type needs. So go check them out, man. They were formerly available on Twitter, and maybe if Brother Elon comes through, they will be back up on that format. It's entirely possible. It's hard to make a call right now, man. There's a lot of stuff that's kind of up in the air. But check out Brother Roman over at opiumtales.com. And, of course, my Viking brothers, Casey and Dusty Tellison, Nordic Smoke Barbecue, the only legit barbecue in the inland Northwest. They are back out again every single Thursday. They got the long ship out there, the big, long smoker trailer at American Gun and Pawn right there off of Sprague. Every single Thursday, they start at 11 and they go until they run out, and they will always run out. So get in line early, man. You don't want to miss out on this stuff. It is some fucking amazing barbecue. And Casey and Dusty both have been good friends of mine on a personal level for years and years. So definitely you always want to vote with your dollar. You want to support the people who are like minds and kindred spirits, because it is one of the few powers that we have left, really. When you look at, and he is a damn good writer. You're absolutely right, Brother Roman. You need to check out his book, Freaks of a Feather. It is the memoirs of a Marine combat vet, machine gunner in theater, and Freaks of a Feather is available on Amazon, published by Latop Press out of Spokane, Washington. And Casey's also in law school right now as well. So definitely give him the support. Check that book out, man. It's visceral, man. It will really, really pull you in. It will take you on a walk on an inner landscape that a whole lot of people probably under ordinary circumstances would avoid at all costs, because there's some serious horror going on. Horror is going to figure heavily into this program. The nature of it, not just horror, but also war. First off, we're going to get into, let me pull up this banner right here. We're going to get into this program. You guys already know where we're going. Ryan's Rabbit Hole. It's our popular segment that we do every single week. Ryan Jenkins, who also set me off into my crane operator journey and opened several doors for me, made it possible for me to change my life. And he, like me, is a repository of useless information, esoteric and obscure. And every week we go down that little rabbit hole. Sometimes it's historical, sometimes it's philosophical, sometimes it's conspiratorial. This week we're going historical, and historical in sort of a roundabout way. See, I'm gonna pull. Let me see. I've got one more graphic that I need to pull up right here. Let me pop that one open. Still learning my way around StreamYard, guys. And again, I don't have a producer. It's just me and a fucking laptop, and a mic and a camera. And the mic and the camera were largely responsible for Mike, who, if he hasn't already checked in, will be checking in shortly. So, a little thought, particularly with what's going on in Ukraine right now. We are hearing a lot, and it's propaganda from both sides. Propaganda cuts both ways. No one has a thoroughly objective outlook on what's going on. Now, we can say that the truth leans more to one side or the other. We can draw distinctions like that. But as far as saying that either side has monopoly on the truth, or that either side is immune to propagandizing for their own ends, that's bullshit. No one is objective. Everybody has an agenda, myself included, Vladimir Putin included, Zelensky included, NATO included. Everybody's got their agendas. So you have to be able to sort through the available information and think critically. But the one thing that we keep hearing about is atrocities. And of course, Zelensky is accusing Putin and the Russian army of atrocities. Putin has made allegations against Zelensky and the Azov battalion and the neo-Nazis that have been folded into the military forces of Ukraine. The difference being, of course, that Putin's complaints have been documented, complete with mass graves, and we've had 8 years with the genocide being carried out against the ethnic Russians in Donbass to determine what's propaganda and what's fact. And Zelensky and his mouthpieces in the media are scrambling desperately right now. And they're using words like atrocity. But the thing that you have to remember about atrocity is that it's war. The rabbit hole is going to focus on one particular historical individual, but there's a tie-in across the board here with regard to the nature of war and the nature of horror and the nature of atrocity, and sometimes the nature of what must be done to convey to the other side exactly how far you are willing to go. This fellow right here, Karl von Clausewitz, he is one of the greatest European military thinkers of all time. And the quote that I'm very fond of with regard to Clausewitz is this one: "Let us accept the risk of repaying cruelty with cruelty, of answering violence with more violence. It will be easy for us to overtake the enemy and to draw him back within the limits of moderation and humanity." Again, that is Clausewitz, who is one of the preeminent European military thinkers of all time. The long and the short of it is this. In fact, I'll give you I'll give you a more up-to-date reference for those of you who, like me, are fans of the film. My absolute favorite film of all time has got to be Apocalypse Now. Growing up as a kid in the 80s, everybody, all the other kids wanted to be, they wanted to be Rambo. They wanted to be Braddock, Chuck Norris, Braddock from the Missing in Action series. They wanted to be, one of those type heroes. When I looked at the Vietnam era in the 80s, I wanted to grow up to be Colonel Kurtz. I wanted to grow up to be Colonel Walter E. Kurtz because he wasn't just a killer. His track record as a killer never had to be illustrated cinematically, right? But he was a man of wit and character and wisdom, and he had truly fucking seen beyond. And when you look at that monologue from Apocalypse Now, this isn't all of it. Where it starts off is it is impossible for words to describe what is necessary to those who do not know what horror means. Horror has a face, and you must make a friend of horror. Horror and moral terror are your friends. If they are not, then they are enemies to be feared. They are truly enemies. Now, the monologue goes on to describe a really horrific event that Colonel Kurtz witnessed when he was with Special Forces, and it shaped him because he finally had the Clausewitz epiphany that you have to be willing to pay in the event of a war. You have to be able and willing to pay cruelty for cruelty, violence for violence, if there is ever any hope. Because again, at the end of the day, your enemy ultimately a lot of times will only respond to the big three: fear, pain, and force. It is that way with political factions of the left here in the United States, and what we are up against and what we will be going up against as this thing moves forward. Because if you think they're going to give up the ghost easily without pulling out all the fucking stops, you have no idea what these people are fucking capable of. But we have to be able to meet cruelty with cruelty within the context of war. I can think of no better example than Basil II. Basil II is going to be your rabbit hole. And I want you guys to follow that one as far down as you choose to take it. Basil II, yeah, Ryan, definitely without without a doubt. Yeah, we will be dovetailing into that one very, very soon. For this week, Basil II was a Byzantine emperor. He took the throne of the Byzantine Empire in the year 963. It was a very tumultuous time. Basil II would go on to be known throughout history. His historical legacy would to be known as Basil the Bulgar Slayer. Now, it's interesting that he came into that historical recognition because for a good 30, 40 years of his reign, he was not having good luck when it came to being a Bulgar Slayer. In fact, the Bulgars reunited their disparate tribes under one banner. They took it to Basil's ass. Not only did they take it to Basil's ass, but they were able to usurp power. They were able to usurp the power of the Byzantine throne out from under Basil II, installing a fellow by the name of Tsar Samuel. Now, Basil, not one to give up lightly. He decided, okay, fine, fuck this. And again, in a roundabout way, tying in Russia, because, and at the time, most of the inhabitants of Russia were Vikings. Again, take a look into that. Follow this rabbit hole as deep as you want, but I'll hit you with the important bullet points. Basil said, okay, fine, fuck it. You've taken my throne. You've handed me a number of substantial military defeats. You got me up against the ropes. A lot of people would fucking give up. Basil said, no, I'm not going to fucking give up. He married off his sister to one of the high-ranking Russians, who, again, Viking lineage, and assembled an army, basically. The Varangian Guard, which was a militia that he put together, basically built on Vikings and Russians and the few Byzantines that remained loyal to Basil. And they kept the fight up. They refused to give up. And again, Tsar Samuel and the people that had usurped the Byzantine throne did not take Basil seriously. They laid a trap for him in a valley. I think it was right around the year 1010, maybe 1012. They laid a trap for him in a valley, and they were going to take him on Thermopylae style, fucking draw him in. Basil didn't fall for the trap. And he sent half his army marching halfway around a fucking mountain and wound up attacking them from both sides and routed Samuel's army. The one source here that I have as far as actual numbers, half the army, around 15,000 men surrendered. Now ponder that, because that number is going to be important here in a minute. 15,000 surrendered. The rest, of course, laid their guts and their blood on the battlefield. All the rest were killed, but 15,000 surrendered. Basil wanted to make an impression because he had fought this thing long and hard, and they kept taking for granted that he was an easy mark, that they could push him out, that they had usurped his throne, and therefore they had stolen all his hopes to power, and that he was basically dead to history. Basil had to make a fucking impression, and so he did. Again, 15,000 Bulgars surrendered. Basil, he let him go. He turned him loose. Oh, wait, I didn't tell you the best part. He turned them loose, but only after lining them up and with hot irons, putting out both eyes of 99 out of every 100 men among the Bulgars. Ponder that. 15,000 captured soldiers. And out of every 100, 99 had both of their eyes put out with hot irons, and one was left per 100 who only had one eye put out. 15,000 men like this. 99 blinded in both eyes, and every 100th man left with only one. And he lined them up, and they clung to the garments of the men in front of them. And like that, he marched them back to their homeland. Now, I want you to imagine being a Bulgar in the year 1010, 1012, and seeing your best, your brightest, your strongest, your army coming back from a battlefield where your victory was a foregone conclusion. The enemy was a joke. The enemy was going to be routed quickly. Their leader was already dead to history. And then what you see coming home are 15,000 men. One out of every 100 left with one eye. 99 out of every 100 blinded in both eyes with hot irons. Think about the people that fell out on that walk and couldn't find their way because there's no one to hold on to. The ones that fell out of line, the infections that set into those wounds. This is not battlefield medicine territory here, people. It's horrible. And you see that marching home from a battle where you thought their leader, his defeat, was a foregone conclusion. History will remember Basil II forever as Basil the Bulgar Slayer. Took him a while to earn that title. But if you want to talk atrocity and you want to talk horror, and the necessity of both to make a particular impression within the context of war, look no further than that example. Because the presence of the Bulgars had dogged him since he assumed the Byzantine throne in 963. He got just a decade in past the year 1000, and by 1018, he had conquered the entire Bulgar Empire. 2 lessons to take from this. Number 1, never, ever assume that an enemy is out of the fight. But number 2, and most important, that within the context of war in particular, it's impossible, as Colonel Kurtz says, it's impossible for words to describe what is necessary to those who do not know what horror means. Bulgar II understood the nature of horror. He understood the necessity of something that horrific. You can argue about the morality of it, but morality is a human construct. What you cannot argue with is its effectiveness. It had the desired result. So when we think about what's going on currently, say for instance in the Ukraine, those of us who have been paying attention since the events after Maidan in 2014, we have watched as Ukrainians, including the Azov battalion, and I won't belabor that point because if you know, you know. Ukrainians going into the Donbass region and committing wholesale atrocities against the ethnic Russians of Donbass. Why? Because they were separatists. Why? Because they did not want to be a part of this new Ukraine, this coup government installed by the West at the behest of Obama and our current president and their deep financial ties. They didn't want to be a part of this. So the Ukrainians went into Donbass and they locked up entire high-rise buildings, welded the doors shut and set the places on fire. You hear all this talk about supposed mass graves in Mariupol. They've been finding mass graves like that in Donetsk and Luhansk for 8 fucking years, and nobody cared. See, the Ukrainians, and you know I have no love for these Ukrop scumbags. You know I have no love for them. But I will say this. They understood the meaning of horror. They pushed into the Donbass region, committing atrocity after atrocity to inspire horror, to dehumanize, to demoralize the ethnic Russians that lived in those regions, to crush them under a boot heel to where they would never rise again. What they underestimated was the innate spiritual strength of the Russian people. Read a book on the siege at Stalingrad and tell me that these people are strangers to horror and atrocity. This is a comedian trying to push an insurgent army against Colonel Kurtz and his Montagnards. The Russian people understand horror on a level that the Ukrainians will never have a grasp of. They were dipping their toes in the pond. They were doing what they felt like was going to be necessary to crush the spirit of the Russian people, and they utterly failed. They will continue to fail. But when you listen to the coverage of the mainstream news media, painting it up, all these stories of atrocities, mass graves, bombings of civilian areas, civilian casualties laying in the street. It is impossible for words to describe what is necessary to those who do not know what horror means. And I would just as soon, on a very personal level, I would just as soon see Vladimir Putin, especially considering the ties of the Russian people to the Byzantines, bringing this all historically full circle. I would just as soon see Vladimir Putin take a page out of Basil II's playbook. Lock down that steel mill in Mariupol, with the last of the Azov battalions holding out. Bring them out one by one. Heat up a bayonet. Leave every 100th man with one fucking eye and march their asses back to Kiev. I have no qualms about that. Nor should you. I can lament the terrible things that the Ukrainian coup government has done to the ethnic Russians of Donbass. I can lament that, and I will. But I do have to bear in mind that my morality or anyone else's is merely a human construct and is entirely subjective. The objective part of me can look at that and go, yeah, that's really shitty and it's really fucking horrible. But I get it. I get it. Because that is the nature of war, and that is the nature of horror. The flip side of that is it will always come home. Just like the Bulgars marching by their hundreds, blinded in both eyes, hanging on to the hem of the garment of the man in front of them, and praying that somewhere up that line was the 100th guy with one eye left. It will always find its way home to visit you. Always. The Ukraine coup government would do very, very well to make a note of that. Okay, so that was a bit of a tangent, but again, I wanted to tie it all in together. Yeah, rate of 4 to 1, 20,000 fucking, yeah, I know, G-Dub, it's ridiculous. But that's your rabbit hole. Basil II, Basil the Bulgar Slayer. I do want you to dig. I know I went off on a tangent and I kind of crossed everything up there, with regard to the things that are going on in Ukraine right now. But that's the beauty of history, of things coming full circle. The more that you know about history, the more that you see the parallels, the more that you see the rhymes and the repetitions, and the funnier it really is on a lot of levels for people like myself and Brother Ryan. who see ultimately the utter futility of all that, and yet are principled enough to stand for what our own morality and compulsion, what our own principles drive us to believe is correct. But dig on that. Basil the Bulgar Slayer, Basil II, Byzantine Emperor Basil the Bulgar Slayer. That is your rabbit hole for the week. And the rest of that, let me see. What do we? George, good to see you. First of all, war is supposed to destroy, kill, and put fear into the enemy, not patty cake like the elites want us to play by. Totally agree, George. Totally agree. Very astute observation. And again, that gets back into the whole Clausewitz, Colonel Kurtz thing. You have to be able to. Horror has a face, and you must make a friend of horror. If you have not seen the movie Apocalypse Now, you should. Again, it is my favorite film of all time, period, bar none. See the original. Do not see the Redux edition, which was a complete fucking abortion. See the original, please. But see it. It's one of the greatest war films ever made. And the monologue of Kurtz on the nature of horror, and when he reveals the event that gave him his epiphany on the nature of horror, it's mine too, George, mine too. It's heavy. It's heavy because he describes an event that will just leave you clutching your chest like, my God, like you can't even imagine it. And then he has that moment of epiphany where he realizes that what the enemy has done, while horrific, was complete genius, complete and utter genius. See that. In fact, I may post just that monologue on the fan page. If I can find it on YouTube, I may post just that monologue. So anyway, that is your rabbit hole for the week. Basil the Bulgar Slayer. That is the historical tie-in, and that is my obligatory commentary on the nature of the war in Ukraine without getting into the fucking specifics. Zapabadu, for all my Russian brothers and sisters out there. Zapabadu, for victory. All we wanted from the beginning was Donbass. We will fucking have it. We will fucking have it, and whatever other drops of blood we can extract from those Ukraine fucks. If they won't give it up voluntarily, we will take it by fucking force. I back Putin's play 110%. And anybody who doesn't like that, fuck right out of my life. I don't back down for public pressure. I say what I mean what I fucking say. So there it is. Well, okay, deep breath. Deep breath, refocus. Again, guys, at the end of the day, look, I'm a crane operator with some opinions. That's it. That's it. I am what I am. I don't make any bones about the way that I feel about things. I don't put forth any airs or any illusions about where I stand on something. You want to know where I stand on something? Ask me. In fact, don't even ask. Just stick around. I'm probably going to spout it. But if you're waiting around for an apology, because my chosen principle, the side that I've chosen to get with, the principle that I'm choosing to stand behind, it differs from your official narrative because I don't have the same intellectual weakness that you do, or I'm not driven by the same fears or the same ignorance that you are. If you're waiting around for an apology, I hope you pack the lunch, motherfucker, because you're going to be here a while. So once again, for my Russian brothers and sisters fighting in Ukraine, Zapabadu, and do what you have to do. The nature of horror, do what you have to do. Leave them spread in the fucking streets. Sprawl them out. Vivisected. I don't care. It's impossible for words to describe what is necessary. So, brothers, do what is necessary and bring it home for the glory of Mother Russia. Zapabadu. Ryan, you always manage to take me off my fucking game. Ovoposters next time, Shabart. Yes, absolutely. And I've been looking heavily into those, by the way. I thought it'd be a cool thing to incorporate with some Predator crossplay. that I saw online and posted this week. I thought that would just be fucking ideal. God damn it, Ryan. This is another place where Brother Ryan serves me well. Not only kindred spirit, like mind, and of course possessed of those higher intellectual constructs, but he always manages, when I'm getting a little too fucking serious, man, when I'm like crawled out there on the edge and I'm just like, like he's always got that talent for just dropping in that one little seed to kind of bring me back from the edge a little bit. It's like, hey, Bart, come on, settle down, fella, settle down, live a little bit, bro, live a little bit. It's not that fucking serious. I love you for that, Ryan, and for so many other things. Thank you for everything. G-Dub. So we won't see that Reverend Bart children's bedtime storybook anytime soon. Actually, me and Johnny Von Bodman have been working on a children's book called Lenny the Reluctant Lemming. And it's and it's all about the one lemming who doesn't want to bow to peer pressure, and it's his mother's telling him everything. Well, just because everybody else does it doesn't mean you have to do it, Lenny. Just because everybody else does it doesn't mean you have to do it, Lenny. And then it comes to the time where all the lemmings run off the cliff. Now we all know that was a staged thing, that lemmings don't really do that. We all know it. But again, it's the cultural reference. So it comes to the day where all the lemmings are supposed to run off the cliff. And finally, Lenny, the reluctant lemming, he looks at everybody jumping off the cliff, and all the words, all of the lessons, it's like, hey, just because everybody else is doing it doesn't mean it's the right thing to fucking do. So, that's basically the outline. But yeah, me and Johnny Von Bodman are actually working on a children's book right now, which should be terrifying enough. All right, let's move on, guys. Let's move on. I've still got a fuck ton of stuff to cover. You saw what we went into with during the opener about the situation in Seattle. Now, again, this was just a couple of days ago. Those of you who live up here in the Northwest, Kurt Voigt, I'm looking at you. Those of you guys who live up here in the Northwest, you do understand that essentially, particularly in Washington and Oregon are essentially two separate states. And I don't mean Washington being a separate state from Oregon. I mean, Washington is two states in and of itself, and Oregon is two states in and of itself. And that line of demarcation is right along the fucking Cascades. West of the Cascades, you have the California leftists, the nut jobs, the fucking lunatics, the ideologues, the zealots, the ones who are committed to leftism as a religion. That is west of the Cascades. And they have the numbers, which is why it is so fucking difficult for conservative candidates to win elections in the states of Washington and Oregon, because, again, they have the big cities, they have the numbers. That's west of the fucking Cascades. Here in Oregon, it's, you have PDX, the lunacy that is Portland. Seattle, as Brother Kurt Voigt can attest, thank you, as Brother Kurt can attest, it's the same thing for the state of Washington with regard to Seattle. All the lunatics are west of the Cascades, but that's where the numbers are. That's where the political power is. It's always going to be difficult to fucking break away from that. Now, once you get east of the Cascades, like where I'm at right now, this little town in Central Oregon, where I'm working on this little project, running a crane out here, it's very red state. I mean, you drive down, and it's a small town. I mean, you're looking at maybe 11, 12,000 people tops. You drive down the street, and it's Trump stickers, and it's thin blue line flags, and it's all kinds of, all of the conservative markers are there. Whether it's bumper stickers or flags or just conversations that you have, or the way that people carry themselves, the idle small talk that people make in day-to-day conversations. It's very fucking red state. It's very blue-collar red state on the east side of the Cascades. It's that way in Washington. It's that way in Oregon. The problem with leftism is a cancer, and it fucking spreads wherever it goes. It's got this implied need to spread itself, even when, like when these religious zealot leftists leave a place like California or Portland or Seattle, because their policies have fucked everything up so goddamn bad that it's completely fucking unlivable. They go somewhere else, and then they vote for the exact same fucking policies. More to the point, as I brought up in the lead, right now in Spokane, and again, Spokane's on the east side of the state over by the Idaho border. Spokane was a beautiful city when I moved there in 2013. Yes, there were, you know, homeless enclaves here and there, but it was a very clean city. It was a very well managed city. It was a very beautiful city. And that was 2013, man. That's like 9 fucking years ago when I moved there. The Seattle and Portland problem have gotten so far out of control that they are literally shipping their scumbags to Spokane by the busload now. And it's not like these predatory miscreant scumbags are like pulling their money and holding their resources and buying bus tickets among themselves to find their way there. No, the cities are very conscious of what they're doing. They're putting, 50, 60 of these scumbags on a bus at a time, and they're shipping them to fucking Spokane so they don't have to deal with them anymore. Now, the problem with Spokane is we have the same feckless leadership there that they do in places like Seattle and Portland. And they keep saying, well, legally, there's nothing we can do. Legally, there's nothing we can do. You know what? In spite of my otherwise libertarian leanings, I am well beyond the point where legality means a fucking thing to me. Because again, you can argue about the morality of something, but what you cannot argue about is the results. Do you understand what I'm saying? That homeless camp started off, I mean, even when I was up there for Christmas, it was maybe six square blocks. The last time that I was up there, it was stretching well over 20 square blocks in all directions, just coming off the northbound feeder, coming back the northbound feeder off of Freya, right there by the 90, and just up like 20 square fucking blocks. And it never fails. You can talk compassion all you want. These Pollyanna motherfuckers can talk compassion all they want, but none of these people are taking in these scumbags into their own fucking homes. They're demanding that I show charity. They're demanding that I show compassion and make exceptions in my life and make adjustments to my lifestyle, but they're not doing anything themselves. They're demanding that our tax dollars go to pay to help these people, but only specifically in the way that they need to be helped. We can't put them in a mental facility because that's cruelty, and we can't do this to them because that's cruelty, and we can't try to keep them out of public spaces where children are because that's, stigmatizing them. I'm going to tell you how far it went in Seattle. There were human feces on the sidewalk all around City Hall. I'm talking like literally piles of human excrement all up and down the sidewalk in front of fucking City Hall. The Seattle cleanup crew, they brought out basically fire hoses once a week and just basically blasted all of it down. And someone from the Seattle City Council, I am not even fucking making this up, you can look it up yourself, said that this was a negative thing because the image of fire hoses stigmatized the homeless and conjured up images of Bull Connor and civil rights and the march. And just the most ridiculous non sequitur bullshit ever. People who are thinking creatures understand the reality. And again, just as I pointed out, this is but one of the surveys that have come down to homelessness and crime. Homeless defendants were significantly more likely to have been charged with victimizing strangers. The rate of violent crimes was 40 times higher in the homeless population. Rate of nonviolent crimes was 27 times higher in the homeless population. These are not fucking hard luck stories. These are not people just down and out and just looking for a fucking lick. They're scumbags. They're fucking scumbags. They are irredeemable scumbags. They are dogs walking upright. I'd give 2 flying fucks at 6 rolling donuts if you rolled through that camp with a bulldozer loaded with flamethrowers. I don't care. I am beyond compassion. I am beyond. It is impossible for words to describe what is necessary. And unfortunately, people do not want to accept the eventuality of what may be or may already be or will become necessary. As long as the left is in power, they will continue to subsidize this criminal miscreant behavior. Even if we get what we know we're going to get in the midterms, we have to hope that the incoming GOP leadership will be willing to step up and do what is, again, necessary, in spite of whose feelings it hurts. We should all be beyond the point where outside perceptions of what has to be done for good people to live normal, civilized, goddamn lives within an industrialized first world Western nation, for fuck's sake, doing what is necessary just to maintain those standards. If other people's perceptions are what dictate our behavior, particularly when those other people are firmly established as clueless, zealot, Pollyannas, ideologues for whom facts and empirical evidence mean nothing. As long as that is what we are up against, what you allow is what will continue. What you enable is what will exponentiate. And what exponentiated just 2 days ago was this Arius Beckett Sumpay bitch stabbing a guy. Now, I want you guys to look this up. Seattle homeless shooting stabbing incident. You can find the video online. It's just a real quick, run up prison shank attack. She wasn't even trying to rob the guy. He was bent over a trash can, picking through, looking for food or whatever, and she just runs up on him and crams a chunk of steel in his gut. Now, I don't know if it was some beef between them earlier, what the fuck might have happened. Doesn't matter. She had, again, prior convictions. You're looking at 3 prior felonies, all of which were violent, by the way. 7 gross misdemeanors, all of which were violent, by the way, and 24 outstanding warrants for her arrest. She had a previous felony assault conviction for stabbing someone in a homeless camp. But again, here's where things got completely out of fucking hand. People have this perception that these homeless are just like, they're down on their luck and they're holding on to these meager possessions and they're basically harmless and they're just looking. She stabbed this guy. This guy ran back to his tent and produced a fucking AK-47. Now, kudos to the guy for his weapon selection. Certainly, we know how I feel about that. But this is a homeless guy, destitute, without a fucking source of comfort in the world, without a job, without any material resources, except for the goddamn AK-47 he's got in his fucking tent. Which begs another sidebar question. Have you seen the tents in these fucking camps? These are not cheap tents. These are like high-end fucking REI, serious outdoor, fucking mountain hardware. We're talking $400, $500 tents. Where the fuck are they coming up with the money for this? Are the tents stolen? Are the tents given to them by Pollyannas with the best of intentions and their hearts in the right place? How the fuck is this even happening? But in any case, here is a guy down on his luck, doesn't have a pot to piss in or window to throw it out of, but he's got 3 fucking rifles in that goddamn tent. We already know statistically that the rates of violent and nonviolent crimes are 40 times and 27 times as high as the general population across the board. We know this. So why aren't we taking action? Because of the leadership. Keep in mind, this is the same leadership. I'm going to take you back to 2020 when the Chaz Chop thing was going on. And Kirk, I know you were around. I know you were around for Chaz Chop. Hey, brother Jeff, the Treasure Monk, he's on board. Check out his YouTube channel, Treasure Monk. Definitely some cool fucking stuff going on. He gets out there and does the metal detecting stuff and goes on adventures and finds historical relics, Indiana Jones style, for people who have been missing relatives since foreign wars years ago. He's a good man. Been a friend of mine since grade school as well. So good to see you on board, Jeff. So let me take you back to 2020, and this is Seattle, when the Chaz Chop thing was going on, the Capitol Hill Autonomous Zone. These leftist lunatics basically seized a police precinct. First of all, how the fuck does that happen? They seized a police precinct, which was ceded to them. The police fucking turned it loose. It's like, look, dude, we could fight you. We could do Fort Apache the Bronx here, but we're not going to do it. We're just going to concede. Gave them the station. They took it over. And what did Jenny Durkin have to say? This is Jenny Durkin talking to Andrew Cuomo, or Chris Cuomo of fucking CNN. We've got 4 blocks of Seattle that you just saw pictures of. There's more like a block party atmosphere. This is not an armed takeover. Okay, again, this is not an armed takeover. Got it. What was that, Mayor Durkin? What? It's not an armed takeover. Right. It's a block party. Okay, gotcha. And again, she said, maybe it'll wind up as a summer of love. This is the same defund the police. This is the same police are bad. We've got to take away their resources. We've got to restrict what they can use as far as non-lethal weapons against peaceful protesters who happen to be burning down the city and fucking taking over, 4 square blocks of territory at a time. She said it turned into a summer of love. 72 hours later, a 16-year-old kid got shot to death with automatic weapon fire. And the Chaz Chop group went in, scrambled the evidence. The police couldn't make any fucking arrest. This is who the left is. These are the same people that continue to pursue bail reform. These are the same people that literally are turning violent felons loose on PR bonds, provided they're the right complexion, in the name of equity and social justice. Break no bread with these people. Engage in no discussions with these people. They are zealots. They are zealots driven purely by ideology, without even a tangential connection to statistics, facts, or empirical evidence. The cities are out of control. If there is one good thing to come out of any of this, it is the fact that we are able to see, as it happens, the end result of extreme leftist politics. We don't have to speculate, hey, if we just do this and we get 10 years down the line with this and our program is this and we put this much money into it, we're getting to see it happen in real time, which is why they are so terrified with the midterms coming up. They know they are going to get crushed because, again, fundamentally, what do we know? People are suckers for what? People are suckers for the truth. And they're seeing the truth play out right in front of them. No amount of legacy media propaganda can cover for the abject failure of every single one of these policies. The border, completely out of control. Crime in the city's completely fucking out of control. The LAPD telling people don't come to Los Angeles, and if you do come to Los Angeles, we cannot guarantee your safety. For all the people that complained about the excesses of police abuse of power in Los Angeles back in the days of Daryl Gates, and let's not mince words, they were out of control. They were totally fucking out of control. But at the end of the day, better than half of those people complaining, if you got them in a quiet moment away from their friends and their college degrees, would trade in a second to have those excesses back and crime be manageable and feel safe in their own goddamn neighborhoods. This is what people don't want to talk about. Again, getting back to what is necessary. You want to talk horror? Go into some of these inner city neighborhoods now that are out of control. You can get robbed, raped in broad fucking daylight on public transportation. Look it up. It's happening. And your solution is to let violent felons out on PR bonds, defund the law enforcement. At some point, it's no longer accidental. At some point, it's systematic. You know exactly what the fuck you're doing. The incident that took place in Seattle is symptomatic of a much larger phenomenon going on in blue city after blue city after blue city. And I don't need to belabor the point. The statistics are there. A 9-second Google search will show you everything that you need to know. People who still cling to these leftist progressive ideologies are not any different from the same religious zealots that they lament and condemn. They're not any different. It's a religion for them. Religion in the sense that it's an article of faith. That in spite of a mountain of empirical evidence to the contrary, and evidence they can see with their own eyes, evidence that touches their life on a personal level, when their mother gets mugged, or their daughter gets raped, or their house gets robbed, or their neighbor gets murdered. And yet, the thing is, we just haven't done enough for these poor, disenfranchised. How's it working out for you, Sparky? How's it working out? We're getting to see it play out in real time. So there are no illusions, and there are no questions, and there are no ifs, ands, or buts about it anymore. It's done. And just as I said, and I meant every word of this, sooner or later, because again, the nature of horror, there is only so much that good, decent, law-abiding people are going to be willing to tolerate. This is one way to handle it. To have the designated agents that we place our faith and confidence in, that thin blue line. And again, I have my own feelings on that. I am a supporter of legitimate law enforcement, but the libertarian that's left in me also realizes just how far out of control that can get if you just leave those powers unchecked. And again, at the end of the day, the first priority for law enforcement is to protect the establishment, is to protect the system, not to protect you. Police officers, it's like that difference between a person and people. A person can be full of love and dynamic and thoughtful and all these other things. People are dangerous, stupid, and easily led, and very panicky. A law enforcement officer can be a sheepdog, a protector, a guardian at the gate, a watcher over the welfare of the weak. Police, plural, are like any other collective. And that is the danger. It's a very real danger. Taking all that into account, if the people that we have designated on our behalf to do the will of the people in keeping that semblance of law and order, if that fails, guess where we wind up, boys and girls? Sooner or later, these homeless camps start having a series of mysterious fires. A community organizer for homeless junkies might, I don't know, fall down a flight of stairs onto some bullets, and nobody saw anything. Eventually, people do have a breaking point, and we are fast approaching it. I would beg the left to pull it back from the brink, but I know that they would not listen. Here ends the reading as far as that. Let's hope going forward that they will see the light, that we can pull it back from the brink, that we can correct this thing. But if not, always be ready for the final eventuality. the final contingency. Knuckle up. And I hope you have your house in order. Let's get into some good news, man. Let's lighten it up a little bit. Two things. Again, we are winning. May not feel like that when you look at these policies and their logical outcomes and all the horrible things that are going on to people in these inner cities. But at the end of the day, we are winning. The broader cultural war, we are winning. Two pieces of evidence this week, CNN Plus, which, first of all, the business model, CNN's ratings are in the shitter. People don't want to watch Don Lemon for free. And you thought that the way out of this would be a paid subscription service. Again, when I get back into these people being religious ideologues, this is what Stelter had to say about it. And I couldn't even believe this. So they spent $300 million on this. They spent $300 million on this idea that people who didn't want to watch Brian Stelter and Don Lemon for free would pay to have these things fucking streamed to them. $300 million they spent on this. And Brian Stelter, of reliable sources, again, the irony just never ends with these folks, rather than admit, hey, this was misguided, our ideology has failed. Again, he's a zealot. He is a mouthpiece for that fucking religion. And what it comes down to is his quote, "You've got all the haters today saying this thing was a failure." I don't know if we can even ever assess that, because it just simply didn't have enough time, because the management's changing direction. By that logic, we were supposed to throw another $300 million at it just to see if people who didn't want to watch that Stelter bitch for free would pay for a streaming service to do the same. They failed utterly. While they failed, and again, I have my own problems. I have my own problems with Fox. Okay, Fox and the rest of the legacy media are flip sides of the same coin. I do distinguish between Fox and non-Fox media, because Fox is the only legacy media that even pays pretense at conservative thought. Everything else is fucking far left. But again, they're the highest rated fucking cable news network. They can sustain both a free network with super high ratings and a Fox Nation subscription service because they're that goddamn popular. Why? Because for whatever reason, their narrative is resonating with the majority of the viewing public. Simple as that. You know, again, I have my issues with it. Tucker's the only guy over there that I give two fucks about, because he's the only guy that's not currently shilling for Zelensky in Ukraine. But you cannot argue with results. And the results are, Tucker's their meal ticket. But they are the highest rating. They are the highest rated cable news network across the board. There's a reason for that, because their narrative is resonating. Tom, glad you made it. Brother Mike, glad you made it too. Looking forward to seeing you next week. Does that play into fundamentally people are suckers for the truth? Maybe, maybe not. I don't think there's a whole lot of truth coming out when they're shilling for Zelensky in Ukraine. But there's enough about the overreaching arc of conservatism that is appealing to mainstream America. We are a center-right country, like it or not. We will continue to be, in spite of all manipulated evidence to the contrary. You think about a guy like Chris Wallace, and I want to feel bad for the guy, but then I think, nah, fuck that guy. He bailed on Fox because he thought that everybody was jumping ship. He got sold on the ideology that Trump is a finite resource, that conservatism is a fading light, and eventually that light will be extinguished. And he jumped ship and he went over to CNN Plus. He was making fat fucking paychecks over at Fox, ones that I don't believe that he earned. I will never forgive him for the way that he acted during the presidential debates. Unbiased my aching fucking ass. Fuck Chris Wallace. But he jumped ship. And he went over to CNN Plus thinking he was going to be their meal ticket, thinking he was going to get even fatter paychecks. And what happens? CNN Plus falls apart in 3 goddamn weeks. People are suckers for at least a semblance of sanity. And when the other options support lunacy, Dennis, that is an excellent fucking point. That is an excellent point. Fox did the same shit when Russia invaded Georgia. Yeah, Tom, I remember, bro. I do remember. And again, I backed Putin's play in Georgia as well. Isn't it funny, the sliding scale of secession, right? All of the former Soviet republics seceding from Russia when the USSR falls apart, that's a good thing, right? Georgia seceding as a republic, that's a good thing. But South Ossetia doesn't want to be a part of Georgia, and they secede and want to become part of Russia. And, oh, no, that's a very bad thing, and it's going to destabilize, blah, 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 blah. Ukraine, separate autonomous republic, but Donetsk and Luhansk wanting to separate and secede and become part of Russia. Crimea as well, wanting to secede and become part of, no, it's dangerous, going to destabilize. Funny how that works. On a much lower level, on a much smaller scale, we've got that going on right here in Oregon. There are a number of counties, both the one that I'm in right now and the ones that surround it, that want to break away. I remember, Tom. I do. I remember. And the same thing's going on with Ukrainians right now. The Ukrainian people where they're having to cut the feeds because they're interviewing Ukrainian civilians and they're saying, dude, it's the Ukrops that are fucking shooting at us. It's these Azov guys that are fucking burning down playgrounds. Cut the feed, doesn't feed into the narrative. Anyway, here in Oregon, there are a number of counties that want to secede from Oregon because Oregon, again, controlled by the numbers west of the Cascades. They want to become part of what they call Greater Idaho. And of course, everybody's all in a fucking tizzy about it. What happened to freedom of association being first and foremost? If I don't want, and again, I remain consistent across the board, even in areas where it may make me very unpopular politically. I believe that the southern states had every right to secede from the fucking Union, the Civil War. I believe that Georgia and Ukraine had every right to secede from the former USSR. I believe that South Ossetia had the right to secede from Georgia, that Donetsk and Luhansk and Crimea had every right to secede from the coup government that we installed in Ukraine. If you don't want to be a part of where you are, you have the right to fucking leave. Freedom of association, the most basic human right. In fact, I put that above freedom of speech. If I don't dig your vibe, and it doesn't matter why, our politics don't line up, I don't dig your shoes, your fucking eyebrows bother me, I'm not required to interact with you. I can walk the fuck away. Same applies to nation states. Same applies to people, to nations, to bloodlines, and here comes the R word, races. Sorry, but there it is. Compulsion under any pretext. It's a bad thing. Cheat up. Republic of Texas. Of course. God damn it. I'd still fight and die for the Lone Star. I still would. Absolutely. But, yeah, that's where we are. I sort of got off on another tangent there, so I lost the original train. What I wanted was a feel-good piece in that CNN Plus failed. And part two of that is Elon Musk and his takeover of Twitter. Well, this just in today from the Wall Street Journal, literally 2 hours ago. Twitter re-examines Elon Musk's bid, may be more receptive to the deal. Now, they're going to act as if they were holding out for more money from the very beginning. You and I both know better. They're folding because they have no fucking choice. If they could refuse this offer from Papa Elon, and again, we all know where my loyalties are for St. Elon. We all know. Okay. If they could refuse this offer without leaving themselves open to fiduciary lawsuits, breach of fiduciary trust, and all the other things for their shareholders, they certainly would. They will wind up going through with this because they don't have a fucking choice, but they're terrified. Not only are we winning on that front, but have you noticed how Netflix shares have plunged? All in the word of fucking Elon Musk, we are told. No, they're failing because they're failing. They're failing because what Elon is saying is true, not because he said it, but because what he said is fundamentally true. People are sick of the woke bullshit. They're sick of the thought control. They don't want to be a part of it anymore. You want to know what they try to blame it on, though? And I'm not even fucking making this up. This is from CNN Business, talking about the fall in Netflix shares right here. The streaming giant, whose stock had already dropped more than 40% year to date, blamed the attrition on increased competition for viewers, and you guys know where they're going, don't you? You know what I'm about to say here, right? They blamed it on increased competition for viewers and Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Isn't that brilliant? Apparently, Russia's invasion of Ukraine can be blamed for every goddamn thing that the left doesn't like right now. The fall in Netflix shares, it's because Russia invaded Ukraine. Even though they've been dropping over 40% over the last fucking 6 months. Oh, well, it's totally Russia invaded Ukraine. The inflation going up, the gas prices going up. Oh, but that's got nothing to do with Biden's policies. It's all because Russia invaded Ukraine. Great. Give me actual fucking out. It's amazing. I smelled a lawsuit for the poison pills. I stated last week the board was not acting in the best interest. Bro, you're absolutely right. Absolutely right. When you fire that many of your own customers to virtue signal, yeah, that's valid. I'll actually open a Twitter account if Elon scores. You know what, Joel, I'm going to hold you to that. Here's the bottom line, though, guys, and here's what I want everybody to feel good about. And then we got one more bullet point item that I've got to get to. We should feel good about all of these things. We should feel good that the backlash against the backlash didn't come with regard to DeSantis and Disney, right? That in spite of the media propaganda arm working 24/7, that we took a stand and people supported it. People continue to support it. Poll after poll, survey after survey, people continue to support it. We are winning. Netflix, their shares plummeting. Why? Because people are done with the thought control. We are winning. Elon, Saint Elon, may his name be praised, buying Twitter. Oh, fuck. Can you imagine the shockwaves that are resonating right now? Because what they count on, again, control the narrative. You control the stimulus, you control the response. Humans are very basic creatures. They will no longer control the stimulus. And that terrifies them because they know in a truly free and open marketplace of ideas, they fail. They lose. They can't stand. They know it. I hate to do the cliched Andrew Klavan thing about drinking leftist tears, but goddamn, they're tasting really fucking sweet right now because we are winning. We are winning. Culturally, across the board, we are winning. Good people are standing up And they're saying, you know what, enough, man. I played along. You remember years ago, and I was one of the first to really call this thing out as far as the tolerance of people's pronouns and fucking ideology and political correctness. And I've been on that shit since the 90s, man. And people always said, dude, can't you just relax and just be nice? Can you just like be kind? And I've said, and I post this in my Facebook memories all the time. You'll always see it with that header. If you guys follow my personal page, I post this and I always fucking reinforce that because the internet is forever. And I will post that shit. I have never wavered. Don't give these motherfuckers an inch ever because there's never an end to it. Oh, Bart, you're so mean. You're so rude. You're so thoughtless. You're hurting people's feelings. But I was right. And here we are. And finally, people have had enough. Fundamentally, people are suckers for the truth. Or, as Dennis more appropriately put it, they are suckers for some semblance of sanity. And when the other side has gone thoroughly batshit insane, there it is. People are going to gravitate to what strikes them as sane and fucking reasonable, which, of course, the other side refers to as fascism, but whatever. So that's where it's going. But ultimately, we are winning. I have one more thing that I do want to cover, and this is of critical import. It is the red flag. We saw this in the header. The red flag that even people ordinarily predisposed to conspiratorial thought were disregarding. Why? Because it just seemed too fucking David Icke nut job. Once upon a time, I was hardcore, devout, super conspiracy guy. Every conspiracy that came down the pipe. My idea now, when it comes to a conspiracy theorist is basically someone who is capable of pattern recognition. That if 1 + 1 = 2 and 2 + 2 = 4, that 4 + 4 is probably going to equal 8. Right? Seems reasonable enough. The problem with it is there are too many people in the conspiracy movement who will draw those connections where none really exist. And I largely parted ways with a lot of the conspiracy crowd years ago because of that shit. Because I've got a fairly sensitive bullshit detector. And every time I got around these people trying to draw these non-existent connections, it was pegged. So I was very reluctant, even though I heard, and even though it made sense to me, that our president was talking about food shortages. What do we know about the way of tyrants? What have tyrants always known? If you want to control people, you control the food supply. You control the food, you control the water, you can control the media and influence people's perceptions and influence people's ideologies and their ways of thinking. If you control the food supply, you got them by the balls. So when this stuff first started floating about all of the disasters that are happening at the food processing plants, I am, and have been for a while, of the opinion never chalk up to conspiracy and malicious intent what can easily be explained away to incompetence and entropy. Mechanical systems break. In all fairness, right, before I give you this list, you have to take into account, it's a whole lot like, because I have to be ideologically consistent. You remember a few years ago where the media started off on their fear campaign about all these black churches are being burned down, man. Black churches all over the country just fucking being burned down. And then you really get in and you start digging into it and you look and it's like, okay, yeah, there are some black churches being burned down. But then you look at the overall number of churches and the overall number of those churches that are black and the overall number of those that are located in rural areas that are prone to fire, and it turns into a whole big nothing. So I was very, very reluctant when this stuff came down the pike about all of the disasters at the food processing plants. Let's get up to speed real quick. Here's a story from the New York Times, a former newspaper. Thank you, little nod to Andrew Clavin. This was published April the 11th of 2020, and it was talking about, and I remember because at the time I was working on a wind farm in Nebraska. That's where Ryan and I first worked together, was that wind farm in Nebraska, and there were food processing plants there. It was a big employer of the locals. And because of the pandemic and because of the lockdowns and because of the restrictions and because of the mask mandates, because we couldn't have, and because of social distancing rules and all these, it was already starting to create problems with the supply chain. The name of the article is Dumped Milk, Smashed Eggs, Plowed Vegetables, Food Waste of the Pandemic. And again, New York Times back in April of 2020, just talking about how these different plants were being affected and how because they didn't have the distribution, that they were having to scrap a lot of usable food. And this was eventually going to create shortages. Coach Pat Militich, good friend of mine, like mine, kindred spirit, went into this at length because he's from Iowa. He's from fucking farm country. He knows from whence he speaks. And he went into this at length. And it did create, yes, excellent point, Dennis. It did create quite a bit of a problem with the supply chain. Not to the point of shortages, because again, the strength of capitalism and the strength of the American transportation base and the strength of, and G-Dub, this is a nod for you and all your trucker brothers, of just truckers in our transportation network, we're fucking solid. But eventually everything gets to a fucking breaking point. Again, if, say, for instance, you had malicious intent and you wanted to break things down and you wanted to control the food supply, first you would make an announcement like, oh, I don't know, a president getting on warning of impending food shortages. Now, at the time that he warned this, what was the actual date of this fucking article? This is back just before my birthday, March the 28th of this year. Why did he just warn about impending food shortages? Well, okay, he's known about the inflation. He's known about the supply chain disruptions. He's lamented all of these things. But suddenly that turned into food shortages are coming. Rogan had an interesting comment on that this week, that we went from Build Back Better to expect food shortages in 14 fucking months. But remember, 81 million votes in a totally legitimate election. Raw. Anyway, so you get the warning of the food shortages. And I read about all of the disasters that they were having at the plants, and I dismissed it. I got to admit, I dismissed it, whether it was normalcy bias or a reluctance to jump on that, correlation equals causation thing. For whatever reason, I dismissed it. It has now gotten to the point where I cannot, in the interest of intellectual honesty and ideological consistency, I cannot continue to ignore the pattern recognition. Because now it's gotten even more complicated. First, it was just fires and disasters and equipment malfunctions and nitrogen leaks, I'm just gonna scroll down really, really, really quickly. In 2021, January, Deli Star in Fayetteville, Smithville in April, Kellogg in July. Then 6 days after that, Tyson in Hinceville, Alabama. August 23rd, Austell, Georgia. September the 12th, JBS Beef Processing. November 29th, Maybright Beef Processing. December 13th, Westside in San Antonio. And that's all in 2021. And then 2022. And this is a partial list. And again, I'm not going to read the whole list here. It's posted on the fan page on Facebook if you want to go look. Dennis Weimer was cool enough to pass it along. But here's what got me. Ramp that up to 2022, and all of a sudden it's the shortest month of the year, February, and there are 3 back to back in Wisconsin, Indiana, and Hermiston, Oregon. That's in February. Then in March, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 in the month of March. On down the line. And here's where it really gets entertaining. Now we're into April. On April the 13th, a processing plant in Idaho got hit with a plane crash. A small plane, a small aircraft crashed into this fucking thing. And then there was a mechanical malfunction in Salinas, California the same fucking day. Well, then literally a week after the plane crash in Idaho, General Mills in Atlanta, Georgia gets hit with, you ready for this? A fucking plane crash. 2 plane crashes into food processing plants a week apart. At that point, you kind of have to stand up and go, okay, I'm not going to go full bore with it and say that, yes, this is the product of the Bavarian Illuminati and the Gnomes of Zurich and the Elders of Zion, and the Trilateral Commission, blah, 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 blah. But to deny that there is a distinct and recognizable pattern here is just fucking dishonest at this point. What are the goals? I don't know. What would the goals be? Assuming someone had malicious intent. You control the fucking food supply. You control the populace. Period. End of statement. Done. Why? Because nobody grows their food anymore. When I do consultations for people for survival and preparedness, and I do that, by the way, if you have anybody who's interested, you might not be able to afford Rawls, but you can afford the Rev. But I do consultations for people. And the very first question that I always ask them, or the very first situation that I postulate to them is, go to your pantry right fucking now. Go. Your pantry, your food shelf, your closet, whatever. Maybe you live in a small apartment, whatever. Go to your pantry right now. Open it up. You look in there. And I want you to imagine that tomorrow morning, all of the trucks that deliver the food stop forever. How long could you coast on what you have in that pantry? For most people, the answer realistically is 3 days or less. Right now, even as I sit here in this room, this place that I have in this little Oregon town, it's about the size of a small studio apartment. It's a nice place, by the way. I really dig this, and I will be giving them a shout out. But I dig my spot here. And I will tell you that even with the limited space that I have in the room, and the even more limited space that I have for storage, even though it is a room with a kitchenette, I got a little mini kitchen over there. The place was built in the 50s. It's got a lot of charm. I love it. I've got very limited space, but I could coast easily for over a month, just with the amount of stuff that I have here. Now, that doesn't mean that I've got cases and cases of MREs fucking put away. It means that I have one shelf with 4 packs of Walmart canned chicken, an entire shelf of that. Boom. I've got plenty of those. I've got plenty of the packets, the Knorr, Knoor, rice and pasta packets. We're not talking nutrition. We're talking not fucking starving to death. But I got 2 big sacks of the rice and pasta dishes. Got plenty of protein powder put back. I've got big ass tubs of all of my grains, my oatmeal. I've got a 25-pound bag of rice. All of that, just right here, just in this room. So even if you live in a small apartment, there's no fucking excuse for you to not be more prepared than that. Again, went off a little bit of a tangent there. Why would all of these things be happening in these food processing plants? Because this is the end game. This is the end game. Ian Fleming. You guys are familiar with Ian Fleming, notorious racist that created the James Bond franchise. Once is happenstance, twice is coincidence, 3 times it's enemy action. We're into dozens. And we're into plane crashes. That's a bit of a stretch. That doesn't really fall into standard mechanical failure or breakdown of infrastructure, does it? But now people are finally starting to report on it. Now, before, if you postulated such a thing, what is the first thing you're going to hear? You're a tinfoil hat conspiracy theorist. And you could definitely make a case for that. But now, one of the same sites, Bazinga.com, that was saying that, oh no, this is all bullshit. The processing plant stuff is this, and there's not going to be any shortages, now have come out and corrected, okay, there's not going to be any shortages, but just in case there are. And you see, it's gotten a lot further than mechanical failure. Again, 27 million. Check this out. One of the links through Bazinga, 27 million chickens and turkeys being destroyed in 30 states because of an outbreak of what? Bird flu. Ooh. An avian flu virus. Isn't that interesting? And in the interest of public health, we've got to cull 27 million chickens and turkeys. Mechanical failures are one thing. Fires are another thing entirely. Air crashes, something else entirely. But now that it's on a scale like this, and you've got government agencies, again, the CDC's got to have, and the FDA have to have the authority to get in and intervene. They're all aflutter over the courts overturning the mask mandate, for instance. Why? Because under the auspices of a public health emergency, you can do anything, which is exactly how they wanted it. So now we are dealing with a public health emergency. And what you can't do through the hard means of setting fires and creating accidents and flying small aircraft. Holy fuck, how many? I still can't get my head around that. 2 fucking plane crashes into food processing plants in the span of a week. Huh? Nothing to see here. Nothing to see here. That's finally what shook me off the fence, people. Sorry, usually not this late to the party. Wow. Unbelievable. But then I started digging deeper, and I started looking into it, all the things they're trying to cull because of the fucking bird flu. G-Dub, I'm going to put your comment on in the background and continue to rant. 3 times normal rates, 3 out of every 10 trucks are shut down and fine. That creates more shortages and costs. G-Dub, I have no problem believing that, and that's why I love having you here for that perspective. One day we'll have to discuss a get home and get back to base from where you're at plan. Truckers always wonder why I have a bicycle in my rig. Oh man, I thought you were just trying. I just thought you were trying to stay in shape, G-Dub. I thought you got a bicycle and a kettlebell there in the sleeper. So seriously though, folks, it's getting pretty fucking sinister. Now, how much effect can you really have on any of that? Are you going to affect government policy? Are you going to step up and force Congress to act? Is your vote really going to matter? Even if the GOP sweeps on the midterms, will the GOP leadership, yes, Mike, you're correct, will the GOP leadership be willing to do anything? I have my doubts. So what does it come down to? Again, comes down to what it always comes down to. We know the food shortages are coming. They told us as much. Here's something else that you should probably expect. And for guys like me, it's too late. Cat's out of the bag. Everybody knows. Anybody who's vaguely aware of my presence knows my position on prepping. You got to take into account that as this moves forward, the legacy media are going to demonize people who were smart enough to put food supplies back. I could see a Kamala Harris easier than I could a Joe Biden, because watching him try to read that off a teleprompter is just going to be sad. Come on, man. You got people, greedy, selfish people, hoarding food while Americans are starving. Hoarders. So by executive order, I'm going to put bounties. Turn in your neighbor will give your family half of their food. It's only fair. It's for the sake of equity. Redistribution. You see how this goes. Much to ponder. But at the end of the day, always better to have and not need than to need and not have. Going back across the arc of this entire sermon, ponder this. And we'll sort of backtrack a little bit. We are winning. We are winning across the board. The fence sitters are shaking off and they're all falling on our side, people. We are going to win. But it could get a hell of a lot uglier before we get across that finish line. We have to take that into account. Because the closer we get to winning, the more desperate the people who want to hang on to that last little semblance of control will get. And trying to hang on to it. Constitution, what is that? What is that? What is that to a democratic administration? What is it? Look at how many executive orders Biden, and I always have to qualify, look how many that Biden's handlers, they came out and said, this will not pass constitutional muster. We don't care. We're going to throw it out anyway, and we'll buy a couple of months. And when it gets overturned in 2 months, we'll figure out what we're going to do from there. An administration that's bent on bringing the population to heel can do a hell of a lot of damage 2 months at a time. So be aware of the level of desperation they're going to reach and the measures to which they will go to maintain that control. Be ready for that. But never lose sight of the fact that in the end, we win. Be prepared for what is coming on a physical, tangible level. Have your 3Bs squared away, your beans, your bullets, and your Band-Aids. Have that shit squared away. Don't let your family starve. Never get black-pilled. Always keep your chin up. Head high. I know that in the end, we're going to win. But don't forget what we talked about at the beginning of the program. Because going forward, you could see the regime getting into some very ugly places. Places that you never thought you would see us be taken here in the land of the free. Usurpations of unsolicited, unwarranted authority on an unprecedented level. Lockdowns, police state measures, anything to keep from giving up that power. Remember, at the end of the day, you are the enemy. Not just to the regime, but anyone who stands with the regime. That could mean segments of the military. That could mean segments of law enforcement. So, in the final analysis, always keep in the back of your head, as a final contingency and an eventuality that one hopes to avoid, always keep in the back of your head the nature of horror, and understand what may become necessary to usher yourself and your family through that cloud and into the new dawn. Shields high, knuckles up, weapon out, and belly in. I am the Reverend. That is the gospel. Appreciate you guys hanging out with me tonight. Coming up on 2 hours. Appreciate y'all being here. Got some new faces. Got a whole lot of regulars here. I always appreciate when you guys show up, man. Kind of been doing a more free-form thing now instead of like sticking to the format. I got my bullet points and I try to hit those as effectively as possible. Seems to be resonating pretty well with you guys. And so I appreciate it. In the meantime, between time, man, if anything that I hit you with here improved your life, changed your worldview, pissed you off a little bit, whatever, I'm going to pass around a digital collection plate. You guys can drop me a little bit of coin, PayPal, Venmo, Cash App. I'm on Facebook Pay. I'm on damn near every one of those little digital formats if you guys want to drop me a little coin. But I do understand that it is a Biden economy, and some of you may not be able to do that. So that's going to be fine, too. We can work with that. Going to go out with a little bit of clutch right here. Here's what you can do for me, though. You can throw me some coin. You can tell other people about it. You can post a sermon, the replay of any of your social media platforms. Post to your Facebook page, your Twitter feed, whatever, carry it on and tell them, say, hey, man, all my OG prophets of doom, my reverence rangers, my sinner sisters out there, just kind of pass it along. Hey, man, Crane operator with some opinions. Fat tooth is crippled. He's on Raise for a couple hours every week. He's a like-minded and kindred spirit. Maybe you'll dig it. Here's the program. Offer it up. Spread the gospel, man. See how many other people might dig what we got going on. Meantime, between time, here's what you can do, not just for me, for yourselves. You guys already know, man, by this point, with the directives. We go over it every week, man. But I'm not just being lip service. It's not just because this is a talking point for me, man. These are important things. It's themes that we keep coming back to. You got the signal-to-noise ratio, the legacy media, everything else out here, always trying to create the noise. You got to be that signal. If you're not going to be the signal, you just got to look for it and focus on that signal. Try to strive because they'll try to crush you with the fucking noise. Be that signal, not the noise. They're going to try to bury you in darkness, to humanize you, to demoralize you, to take you out of the fight before the fight even gets started. You got to break through that shit. You got to be that light in a world full of darkness. You got to be able to put that smile on your face. You got to be able to follow that Viking proverb, laugh and let his ears, laughter let his face remove. Be that light amongst the darkness. And first and foremost, the iron rule is to be the strength in a world full of weakness. Because without the strength to survive, none of the other shit matters. I appreciate you guys being here. I love y'all. I am the Reverend. That is the gospel. See you next Sunday. Thanks for coming out. Peace. Love y'all, man.